We are getting some information here, Ian, that Israel was notified in advance of this attack, these three different attacks on nuclear sites there. And Ian, no doubt this is what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wanted.
Oh, undoubtedly, it's not just what Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli cabinet, and honestly, a large number of the Israeli population wanted, but it's also what Netanyahu and others have been lobbying for some time, trying to make the case to the president. And I spoke to the Israeli president just a couple of days ago, and he was making this point, trying to make other leaders understand that this wasn't just about a threat to Israel, this was about a threat to the wider region, a threat to Europe and a threat to the United States, a nuclear-armed Iran, a country that pretty much since the Iranian Revolution in 1979 has sworn to eradicate the state of Israel, has used blood-curdling language to that effect, a country that has actively supported so-called proxy groups, in other words, bankrolling, arming military groups throughout the region to agitate against the United States and also Israel. Hezbollah, for example, in Lebanon, was accused of being one of the primary instigators in the Marines barracks bombing in Beirut back in the 1980s. There have been a number of instances where Iran has been seen as a malign actor against Israel and its Western allies. Part of what we've been witnessing since October 7, 2023 has been an attempt to try and degrade Iran and its sphere of influence. Iran had successfully established, we talk about it as a Shia crescent. Iranians are primarily part of the Shia branch of Islam rather than Sunni branch of Islam, which is dominant, of course, in the Gulf. And they had extended, certainly after the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, influence throughout Iran and then into Syria under President Bashar al-Assad. They were very active in the civil war there against the rebels, who obviously recently triumphed, and then into Lebanon itself with Hezbollah operating there. They were able to transfer weapons, transfer knowledge, and this was certainly regarded as a threat for Israel, which is part of the reason why it bombed Lebanon in the first place. And we've seen this gradual dismantling of the so-called Shia crescent. It's been an historic time in the Middle East. Whatever one side anybody may sit upon, you can't deny that the face of the Middle East has been radically changed under the Netanyahu government and with the backing of President Biden and now President Trump. So no surprise, I think, that the Israelis were notified. The Israelis would have to work in concert with the US. It remains to be seen whether any Israeli aircraft or resources were used. We know that Israel had said just a couple of days ago that they controlled the skies over Iran. That would have been very important for the Americans and any operation. In President Trump's message on Truth Social, he says that they hit 3 sites, not just Fordo. And that would potentially imply that obviously that multiple aircraft were involved. And we have to wait and see if Israeli aircraft were also involved. If not, certainly Israel appears to have eyes on the ground, has a number of intelligence gathering sources. It's been going after people on the ground, individuals, nuclear scientists, key military commanders, and it has, like it did in Lebanon against Hezbollah, dismantled a lot of the leadership. But there are huge questions about what the reaction is and what happens next. Now, President Trump again says on Truth Social, he refers to let's make peace. Well, is Iran going to be ready to make peace? Now America has taken part in this bombing. What will the reaction be in the wider region, where we saw on Friday, after midday prayers, significant protests, tens, hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets in many countries throughout the region, angry at Israel's bombing, and a lot of that anger will now turn to the United States. As we've said, there will be huge concerns for the safety of US civilians, US military, US interests throughout this region, which are multifarious, in not just troops on the ground. You have the US Fifth Fleet docked in the region, in the Gulf. You have military camps spread throughout the region, but of course you have multiple businesses, embassies, consulates. So there are huge numbers of things to be of concern about. There have been certainly worries about the US consulate here in Tel Aviv and whether or not that would potentially be a site for retaliation. It's been very quiet relatively here in terms of Iranian attacks, and everyone had expected that to change, as it has most nights, pretty much around this time. We have to see what the impact on Iran is. I think those people who feel that Iran could be easily bombed into submission do not necessarily understand the country. As we saw in Iraq, even as we saw in Afghanistan, it is countries and the regimes that govern them are not naturally given to immediately acquiescing to foreign intervention, to foreign bombing. In many senses, it can act as a rallying call for the nation to get behind the leader, in this case, this theocracy that has run Iran since the 1980s. And so we have to wait and see what the reaction is. They had threatened in blood-curdling language, the Ayatollah and others, that there would be direct retaliation against American interests in the region. And we have to wait and see whether that was just rhetoric or whether that was a genuine threat that will be followed through on. We have to wait and see what the bomb damage assessment is. Is Israel going to be content to say, we've looked at the damage and we've degraded Iran's nuclear capability enough to be acceptable? And again, speaking to a senior military official just 2 days ago, he made it clear we never said we'd get rid of all of Iran's nuclear capability. We just said that we would degrade it so it was not an imminent threat.